All right, what's up, guys? Little impromptu episode of Black and Gold Breakdown. The oversized yellow tee is on, and yeah, Branon Aiyuk has officially requested a trade from the San Francisco 49ers per Mike Garafolo of NFL Network about a half hour ago. Garafolo tweeting, All-Pro wide receiver Branon Aiyuk has officially requested a trade after an offseason of unsuccessful attempts to reach an extension. Despite a recent meeting, the Niners haven't been willing to engage in negotiations since May, so Aiyuk has respectfully asked out. Now, a few things to note here. One, this does not 100% mean that Aiyuk's definitely getting traded. Deebo Samuel did something similar before he got his extension. So we've seen him, hell, even in the Steelers' own division. T. Higgins requested a trade earlier this year. So did Trey Hendrickson. They're both still in Cincinnati. By no means does this guarantee a trade will happen involving Branon Aiyuk. A matter of fact, Adam Schefter just tweeted, other teams that have reached out and spoken to San Francisco have been told that the 49ers have no intention of trading disgruntled wide receiver Branon Aiyuk, who officially has requested a trade. 49ers open training camp next week. So again, by no means do the 49ers have to trade Aiyuk. They do not have to. Does this make things more interesting? Absolutely, especially if you're a team like the Steelers, who definitely need a receiver, have been pretty patient in waiting for something like this to open up or something like this to happen. This definitely, gets those talks going again as to, will they be able to acquire him? I've said it all offseason, if I'm the 49ers, I am certainly not trading him. There's no reason for the 49ers to trade him. But the fact that negotiations, they haven't had any sort of talks for an extension since May, that's a little bit weird to me, especially with, we've seen A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle, Justin Jefferson, all these guys get paid. And I think Branon Aiyuk even alluded to it himself when he was appearing on the Pivot, saying, that the old price tag is no longer the new price tag because those other guys got paid. So the 49ers kind of shot themselves in the foot by waiting and not negotiating with Aiyuk. And now that price tag is only going to continue to, or it's only gone up. I don't think it's going to continue to go up unless something crazy happens. But it's going to sit around that, $30, $31 million range. CeeDee Lamb, by the way, reportedly wants 32. So as in 3-2, not 30 as well. He wants $32 million a year. So if CeeDee Lamb gets paid before Branon Aiyuk does, that's only going to be more flame to the fire for him. So again, this is big for obvious reasons because it has big implications if they ultimately do trade him. But we've seen reports as to what the 49ers have said no to, right? Apparently the Jaguars offered a first-round pick amongst other things, and we're told no. So the compensation to even get Aiyuk, it's going to be minimum a first-round pick, which I've been very outspoken about being okay with doing. Because if you don't trade for a guy of that caliber, you're going to use the first-round pick on a receiver next year anyway. And no one that you take next year in the draft is going to be as good as Branon Aiyuk is right now, and slim chance that he's going to be as good as Branon Aiyuk ever. So I'm more than okay with having to part with a first-round pick for it. If it's a first and a third, if it's the A.J. Brown deal, I'm cool with that too. And the Steelers can more than afford to do it. Right now, they're projected to have about $89.6 million in cap space next year, which is the third most in the NFL, behind New England and Washington. So they can more than afford to do this before anybody, freaks out about the price tag. That's one of the benefits of having a pretty young roster, is that they don't have a ton of big deals. And T.J. Watt, Minkah Fitzpatrick are their two biggest deals. They're not paying a quarterback huge money right now, which is something that they'll have to get figured out as well. But if you can get Branon Aiyuk, you get Branon Aiyuk. That goes without saying. And again, if it costs them a first and a third to do it, okay. Because again, you're going to take a wide receiver in the first round next year anyway if you don't get one. And a third round pick, frankly speaking, I'm not worried about losing a third round pick for Branon Aiyuk. Just doesn't bother me. So, then look, if the Steelers can pull this off, then you're looking at the immediate future being helped right away. Because you're going to find out if Russell Wilson or Justin Fields are your guy. Because there's no excuse as to why you can't succeed in an offense that has George Pickens, Branon Aiyuk, Pat Freiermuth, Najee Harris, and Jaylen Warren, and an improved offensive line. No excuse as to why you can't succeed with that. So they'll find out very quickly if Russell Wilson or Justin Fields are their answer going forward. And if they're not, then they know, and then they can go try and get somebody else in 2025. And also it helps because if Russell Wilson or Justin Fields are your guy, then you have two really good receivers to distribute the ball to, as well as Roman Wilson and Calvin Austin, and a really good defense to help you win games. So there's a lot that this could do for the Steelers. And we've talked about it all offseason. There's been a ton of murmurs. The Steelers reportedly, thought that they had a deal in place with the 49ers for Aiyuk during the draft, according to Michael Lombardi. So, this has been a very long time coming. This all really stemmed back to April, beginning of April, mid-April, when Aiyuk posted on Twitter for the first time in over a year, and he posted directly at Mike Tomlin saying that, he heard that they looked alike or something like that. And that's kind of what got these things going. Obviously, Aiyuk's been very active all offseason, with these cryptic posts on TikTok, and I want to say he posted something on Twitter or Instagram or something of the like. So if he does get traded, the two most likely destinations are Washington because of his relationship with Jaden Daniels. That's obviously a place that he would want to go. And he said it himself in his interview on The Pivot, saying, if I'm not in a 49ers uniform, I can see myself in a Washington Commanders uniform. And if I'm not in a Washington Commanders uniform, see myself in a Pittsburgh Steelers uniform. So Aiyuk himself is kind of named and laid out his path should he be traded from the 49ers and the two most likely destinations that he would go. And make no mistake about it, Branon Aiyuk is a special football player. He's without a doubt a top 10 receiver in the NFL. And if you're the Steelers and you can get him, and it costs you a first and a third to do it, you do it. Because having that type of duo where defenses have to choose, okay, are we going to double George Pickens to take away the deep ball, but just let Branon Aiyuk eat us underneath and in the intermediate portion of the field? Or are we going to double Branon Aiyuk and risk George Pickens being one-on-one downfield? It's a pick your poison type situation if that does become reality. George Pickens last year led the NFL in yards per catch with 18.1. Branon Aiyuk is one of the most efficient route runners in the NFL last year, making the absolute most out of every route that he ran. And the numbers may not look gaudy, but when you look at it from a per route run perspective, he is without a doubt one of the finest receivers in the NFL. And if the Steelers can find a way to get him, then this is a no-brainer. And it's something that we've talked about all offseason, something that we've been hoping would come to fruition. And again, just because Aiyuk requested a trade does not mean that the 49ers will trade him. They do not have to. T. Higgins requested a trade earlier this offseason, still a Bengal. Deebo Samuel did it in the past, ended up getting extended. And plenty of guys have requested trades and then ended up staying with the team in which they requested a trade from. So this doesn't put anything in stone. This is still very much an up-in-the-air situation. 49ers start training camp next week, so if he doesn't report, then that's going to be, another layer to this. But they do not have to trade him. Like I've said, if I'm the 49ers, I would have paid him by now. because he is the best receiver on that team, and the offense wouldn't look quite the same in the passing game without him. You take Branon Aiyuk out of that offense, that passing game diminishes very quickly. So I would have paid him already if I'm the 49ers. But I'm certainly not trading him. I've been pretty consistent with that throughout this entire process. I know a lot of you have comments right now, mostly. I know. There's a lot of happiness right now. Chances of a trade go much higher with the trade request versus there not being one. Sure. Definitely. Do you think he's a product of the 49ers? No. I've never understood that either, being an argument. Like, you could say that for quarterbacks. Like Brock Purdy, Tua Tagovailoa, that kind of tier of quarterbacks being in those styles of offenses. I get that argument for quarterbacks, but receivers, like, he's played with Jimmy Garoppolo, Brock Purdy, and Trey Lance his entire career. Those aren't exactly top-tier talents. But you got to be able to separate still as a receiver. You still got to be able to get open as a receiver. I mean, hell, look at the Super Bowl. Big reason that they couldn't win was because Deebo Samuel could not separate from Trent McDuffie. So you still, as a receiver, need to be able to do the things that elite receivers do, and Branon Aiyuk does all of those things. So no, I've never subscribed to the thought that he's like a product of the 49ers. That's never made sense to me whatsoever. Do anything in the world to get his ass. Hey, I'm very much on board with that. There's no reason why, if the Steelers can get him, that they shouldn't. If he can be got, then go get him. No reason to not go get him. Again, if it costs you a first and a third, okay. And yeah, you're going to have to pay him because he's a great player and he's going to cost great player money. So, and I've been pretty consistent with that line of thinking too. Like, people can't bitch and moan about like having a mediocre team when you're not willing to give people big time money. Like, okay, you're going to get what you pay for. And with Branon Aiyuk, if you give him the big money, you will get what you pay for. So I'm very much on board with all of it, man. Given that these players don't have a ton of leverage when it comes to what team they end up with in a trade, what team besides Pittsburgh, Washington can afford to extend him, have a space for him, and what would you want to what would want to trade for him? New England's one that comes to mind pretty quickly. They have the most cap space in the NFL, or the most projected cap space in the NFL next year. And what better weapon to have for a young, hopeful superstar in Drake May than a guy like Branon Aiyuk? So they're a team that immediately comes to mind when it comes to the Branon Aiyuk sweepstakes, if you will. Pittsburgh and Washington both make a ton of sense for me, though. I think that when it comes to, not having leverage or anything, sure, he doesn't really have leverage, and I guess he doesn't really control where he goes. But I think from an organizational standpoint, it certainly does help. It helps your overall image and future signings if, the Justin Fields thing, for instance. He told the Bears, hey, look, I know I'm going to get traded. If there's a way you can get me to Pittsburgh, I would really appreciate if you get me to Pittsburgh. Ryan Poles said that he would send Justin Fields wherever he wants to go, and he stood by his word. That goes a long way with players. So I think if you're the 49ers and if Branon Aiyuk came to you and said, look, if there's a way you can get me to Washington or Pittsburgh, like, if you're going to move me, those are the two that I would really prefer to go to. It would mean a lot to me, and like that would be good. That would be good for the 49ers as an organization too. And by the way, they're going to get a nice package in return for him no matter what. So I'm pretty confident in the fact that the top three teams in projected cap space for 2025 are the three teams that make the most sense to me. New England, Pittsburgh, Washington are the ones that make the most sense. Did you just see this as you said, Patriots? I can't pull up the tweet. It just gives me the link, but I can look and see what Josina Anderson said. I'm on Twitter right now. Let me just type in her name. How would you look at that? See, the Patriots apparently did reach out about Branon Aiyuk. So, I mean, like I said, that makes perfect sense. They have a ton of money and a rookie quarterback who they want to be a stud. Going through a change in identity and offense, too. They brought over Alex Van Pelt from Cleveland, so it's going to be a different offense. They're going to let Drake May let it fly. So, having a guy like Branon Aiyuk would make perfect sense for them. Doesn't make sense. Or does make sense, excuse me. Doesn't make sense for the Steelers to trace for him when they are so good at it. I'm tired of hearing that argument, man. I really am. Like right now, they don't have anything. They can't play, and their thought process can't be, well, we'll just draft a guy in 2025 and he'll eventually be good. No, get a guy that you know is damn good right now. Because TJ Watt's not going to get any younger and can't sit around while you develop a receiver. Minka Fitzpatrick's not going to get any younger and wait for you to develop a receiver into a star. And there's no guarantee that whoever you do take in that situation ends up being as good as Branon Aiyuk. I'm tired of hearing the draft argument. I'm tired of hearing the homegrown talent argument. Go and get good fucking players. I'm so over the whole, like, oh, we'll just draft him. Fuck that. Get good players. First-round picks are overrated, and you have to pay elite players elite money. It is what it is. Exactly. I'm just very over the whole traditional style of thing when it comes to the Steelers. Now, very much done with it. I don't care. Look what the Rams did. Do you think they gave a shit about who they drafted? No, they traded away all their draft picks for good players, and it won them a Super Bowl. Go and get good players. If it costs them the entire draft to just get a boatload of good players, cool. That's fine with me. I do not care. Put that on a shirt. I don't care. Get good players. Outside of GP and Deontay Johnson, what elite receivers have they drafted or developed over the past 10 years? Washington, Claypool, Coates, etc. have all been flops. Juju only balled thanks to Ben and AB. Those are also all very good points. Think of the best options for his legacy. I don't think legacy has anything to do with it, especially for, a receiver per se. I think that his relationship with Jaden Daniels definitely makes Washington probably the front runner in terms of where he would want to go. But again, the fact that he name dropped the Steelers as a team that he could see himself playing for, that definitely goes a long way. I think if he does get traded, it's going to be either to Washington or Pittsburgh. Again, New England makes sense. And according to Josina Anderson, they reached out to the 49ers. It wouldn't shock me necessarily. But the two teams that make the most sense to me are Washington and Pittsburgh. So that would be where I would place him. Like an eye booger. So if I had to guess right now, does he get traded? I'm still kind of leaning toward no. But more likely now and today than it was yesterday, right? I agree, Bruce. Figure it out. Just go get him. Now, of course, it takes two to tango. The 49ers have to be willing to part with him, and according to Adam Schefter, they're not really willing to do it. So they have to be, once we get to training camp, and if Branon Aiyuk doesn't show, then I think that will maybe lead to a little bit more heat and more possibility to do it. I don't think it happens in the next week. I think it'll happen. If it does happen, it'll happen in the midst of training camp. Is DC really interested, or is it just that Daniels and Aiyuk are friends, so people claim them based off of that? I would assume the Commanders would be interested. I don't see why they wouldn't be, especially when you have a rookie like Jaden Daniels, where you can never have too many weapons to help him. Now, a trade for Branon Aiyuk would probably cost them Terry McLaurin, I would assume. Like if they did, okay, Terry McLaurin and a draft pick, or a couple draft picks for Aiyuk, then maybe. But I don't know. I don't know exactly what it would take. I'm just kind of spitballing here. Or if they were to say like trade like Jahan Dotson and some draft picks for Branon Aiyuk, maybe that would be more realistic. I don't know, but I would assume that there would be interest there. You know, anything to make your quarterback happy should always be on the forefront of the franchise's interest, because that's what your franchise revolves around. If you don't have a quarterback, you don't have anything. And if Jaden Daniels were to go to, plus there's obviously a connection to the 49ers with their new general manager who used to be John Lynch's assistant GM, whose name is escaping me right now. I can't remember the name of the 49ers GM or the Commanders GM. Adam Peters, yeah. So there's connective tissue there. Adam Peters used to be the assistant general manager in San Francisco before taking the Commanders job. So again, if Jaden Daniels were to go to Adam Peters and say, look, man, if there's a way we can get Branon Aiyuk, we should absolutely do it. It's in the best interest of the Commanders to keep Jaden Daniels happy. And if that means getting a top tier target, then yeah, I think that there would be interest there. But again, takes two to tango. And if all these other teams, you know, I'm sure the 49ers are going to get a ton of calls from a lot of teams. But if they're not willing to take those calls or entertain them, it doesn't really mean anything at the end of the day. Because they do not have to trade him. Don't have to do it. And we've seen plenty of instances, not just at the receiver position, but at, you know, across football as a whole, where guys have requested trades and those requests don't get fulfilled. So, now, like I said, if I'm the 49ers, I would have paid him by now, and I'm certainly not trading him. I'm going to try to figure out a way to pay him. So, have to pay Purdy, so they would be dumb not to trade him. The Purdy thing is interesting because if there's one team in the NFL that can say, look, dude, we love you, we are not giving you $55 million, it's the 49ers. Because Kyle Shanahan can say, look, I've taken two different quarterbacks to the Super Bowl since I've been in San Francisco. Who's to say I can't take a third? You know what I mean? So I think that the Purdy deal will be very indicative. Also the Tua deal, because Tua's accomplished nothing. Respectfully speaking, he's accomplished nothing. He hasn't won a game that matters in his career. So that's cute that he can put up a bunch of fun stats against the Broncos. But look at their record against good teams. Dolphins have accomplished nothing. And if they pay Tua that type of money, they're stupid for doing it. And Bills fans everywhere will rejoice. So I think that the Purdy thing is, they'll pay Purdy. I don't think they're going to give him $55 million. I think that what they would do is maybe give him like 45 with incentives to get up to, 55, 56. Because with the 45, you can bundle a lot of that in different types of ways where, a good chunk of it doesn't go against the cap, similar to what the Lions are doing right now. So Purdy deserves $70 million if Lawrence got 55. Trevor Lawrence is far better than Brock Purdy. We need to stop this. And by the way, this is a shameless plug here. I wrote a very long piece about how Trevor Lawrence, I'm not trying to dunk on you here, by the way. I wrote a long piece about how Trevor Lawrence separates the people who watch box scores from the people who actually watch the games. Trevor Lawrence is far better than Brock Purdy, but comfortably better than Brock Purdy. So I think that the Purdy thing will be very interesting to monitor next year when we start really having those conversations about, okay, they can pay him. What are they going to give him? By the way, I'm aware I have like this big red mark like right here. I shaved my eyebrows, and I guess that was a result of it. So don't mind me if you see me picking at it. So, but we will see what happens. Again, just want to do this quick video, give my overall thoughts. I know that you guys, I'm sure, wanted to get your thoughts out as well. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, please do so. I think we're like 10 away from 1,200, so that's pretty cool. Read all the stuff at Behind the Steel Curtain. Read all the stuff at the Sporting News. I have a long-form piece on the Chiefs coming. And last week I did a very long-form thing on the Bills as well. So very proud of both of those. If you go over to Sporting News and read those, that would be delightful. Follow me on Twitter at JBaileyNFL. Tons of Steelers talk, tons of football talk. And yeah, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Thursday, we will have one of my favorite people, NFL MVP voter, creator of DVOA, and just released the 2024 edition of Aaron Schatz's Football Almanac. Aaron Schatz will be on the pump fake with me to talk about some projections from the Almanac and what DVOA and what all these projections are going to be telling us heading into the 2024 season. I love Aaron. We share a love of Josh Allen. He was the only MVP voter who voted for Josh Allen and not Lamar Jackson last year. So he has a very special place in my heart. So Thursday on the pump fake with Aaron Schatz, going to be a very fun show, talking a lot of projections for a lot of different teams, who's overrated, underrated, who's going to be flying under the radar. A lot of good football talk coming on Thursday on the pump fake with myself and Aaron Schatz. So be sure you're subscribed to the channel to watch it live. You can also get it wherever you get your podcasts, all that good stuff. So again, make sure you're subscribed to the channel to get that. And I will see you guys very soon as we keeping track of all this Branon Aiyuk news and Steelers news heading into training camp. So subscribe, and I will see y'all soon. Have a great day.